So now we're going to look at the overlap. So the overlap tells us how similar the typical values are. Typical values are majority. So we're talking about the middle 50%, what happens most of the time, or 50% of the time. So when we talk about overlap, it's the overlap of the box. The middle 50% of our data is the box of our box and whisker graph. So we look at overlap by taking the lower quartile of one of our groups and the upper quartile of the other group. Subtract the upper quartile from the lower quartile to identify the overlap. So in this case, our lower quartile of the afternoon is higher than the lower quartile of our morning. So we're going to take that value. And the upper quartile of our morning is lower than the upper quartile of our afternoon. So these two values create our overlap. Our overlap goes from 1.6 meters per second from the lower quartile of the afternoon to 3.3 meters per second for the upper quartile of the morning. The overlap is 1.7 meters per second. And then we turn this into a sentence. In my sample, always start with in my sample because you're going to discuss what would happen outside of your sample later on as well. So in my sample, there is a large overlap of the typical wind speeds for the morning and afternoon in northern Dunedin. The overlap is a range of 1.6 meters per second. From the lower quartile of the afternoon wind speeds at 1.6 meters per second to the upper quartile of morning wind speeds at 3.3 meters per second. Now, I use the word here large overlap. And the reason I say large is because we've got 50% of our data in each of these boxes, 50% of morning wind speeds and 50% of afternoon wind speeds. We can see that most of those data points are the same, are similar, because we've got 25% plus a bit more. And here another 25% plus a bit more. This considers a large overlap. Okay, because we look at how much data is overlapping, and it's quite a significant amount of our 50%. If we look at the smart dog example, we can see that our lower quartile of small dogs is higher than our lower quartile of large dogs, so we're going to take that amount, and our upper quartile of large dogs is lower than our upper quartile of small dogs, so we're going to take that amount. So this shows us that our overlap is here. So in my sample, there is a moderate overlap of the typical intelligence ranking for large and small dog breeds. The overlap has a range of 14 points from the lower quartile of small dog breeds at 35 points to the upper quartile of large dog breeds at 49 points. Now, the reason I say moderate, even though the boxes are, even though the boxes are 25% of our data is here and 25% of our data is here, is because of the size of the spread. You notice that this is half of the spread of our data, and this is half of the spread of our data here. I'm going to look at spread next, but it means that this is moderate, okay, a moderate overlap. You can also have complete overlaps where the boxes completely overlap each other, and you can also have no overlap or small overlap. So no overlap is when you have two completely separate box and whisker graphs, and small overlap is when only a small portion, say about this much, is overlapping. Okay, so you need to take into consideration how large your boxes are on your box and whisker graphs, and also take into consideration the overall spread and size and physical data.